But finally, what can you do with your, I mean, let's say you do have some money, or eventually you're going to have some money, what are you going to do with it? And I don't like giving investment advice, because it's not my area, but you'd be crazy not to buy some gold and silver coins. And it's a good investment at a time like this, to have some gold and silver coins. And because I think people say, oh, they're really high priced. No, I think they're going way higher. And you'll be, within five years, I would say, people holding gold are going to experience a tremendous windfall, and you're going to be saying, I wish I'd done that. So I would say definitely do that. And another way you can know that you should have some gold and silver is that on CNBC they tell you not to. So therefore, as quickly as you can. And then for anything else, I would recommend. I have no connection to his firm. I wrote an article for his website. I'm not employed by Peter Schiff. But Schiff, I mean, again, watch his video. Peter Schiff was right. And you just get a kick out of how so cool this guy is. I mean, he is just the coolest SOB you can imagine. I mean, if you can imagine an investment guy being cool, he absolutely doesn't. I mean, it's like, without even raising his voice, he has verbally ripped the heads off these people. And you know, not that I generally favor ripping people's heads off, but in a figurative sense, if there were ever people who deserved their heads ripped off, it's the people Schiff is talking about. Watch him, listen to him. He's got I never miss it, or at least I get on the podcast. He's got a show Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Central on his website that he then archives. And he takes his website is europac.net, EUROPAC.net. And if you listen to the show, like the first 20 minutes, it's him starting the show saying things like, okay, let's see what asinine thing they're up to this week. You know, and then he goes into that, and then he takes calls. You can call in and ask him, what should I do with this money, what should I do with it? And he's very, very reliable. So I go to his website and get advice from him if you have money, because he's been right in the past, and I think he's going to continue to be right. And I'm liable to open up an account with him very soon myself. So I'm not just telling you to do this. I'm not only the Hair Club president, but I'm also a client. The older people. Okay, yes.
And so if we were to end the Fed and have a sound currency, I wondered if our interest rates would really reflect the free market, or if they would be influenced by competition with fiat currencies abroad.
Yeah, let me think that over. Okay, let me think that over, because that's an interesting question about. Well, I mean, I'm liable to think that if one country goes back to sound money, I think you would actually see numerous of them doing it simultaneously. Because if we've managed to reach such a critical mass of support for it in one place, then I think it's bound to have spread. But nevertheless, the question you raised, the intellectual question you raised, let me think this over, because I don't want to give a flip answer. I want to give a serious answer, but we'll wait till the whole thing's over and I'll let it germinate in my head. But thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Could you kind of briefly explain fractional reserve banking? And something else is, all this influx of capital has been going on for quite some time now. That's going to come home to roost one day in interest rates rising, I suspect. When do you think that, do you agree with that, and when do you think it's going to happen?
Okay, yeah. All right, so, wow, these are big questions, so I'm going to have to give shortish answers. So the gentleman's first question is to explain what fractional reserve banking is. Well, some of you, I know of a guy who went to his bank, asked his bank teller about this, and she had no idea this was happening at the bank. And what it means is, if you put $100 in your little checking account, how much of that money, I mean, they're not taking, you know, Joe Smith puts $100 in his account. They don't write a little envelope with the name Joe Smith on it, put the $100 and then put it in the safe somewhere. What they do is they lend out 90% of that. So what they've really got is about $10 of your dollars. Then the 90% that they lend out, then that gets spent and deposited in other banks. And so the 90 gets deposited. So then 81 of that gets lent out. So multiples. So when the Fed creates money, it doesn't just stop there. Then there are additional layers of money creation throughout the banking system, because the banks don't have to keep all your money on reserve. They can actually lend it all out. So if you're thinking, whoa, 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 how am I going to get my money? How am I going to get my money? What if they don't have my money? You tell me? Well, okay, they feel like they've got they're not expecting everybody to come claiming their money at the same time. You know, so if they did, if you all did, then, you know, the FDIC would intervene and they would print up a whole lot of money out of thin air, create a lot of inflation, and solve the problem that way. But it's like, I ruin the movie It's a Wonderful Life for my wife every year. I ruin this movie every year because the guy, the Jimmy Stewart character, is saying people are demanding their money out of this crummy bank. And, you know, I'm supposed to like this guy, and I don't like this guy. Because they're going up demanding their money, and he's saying, I don't have your money here, it's in the French house. And then there's a great Simpsons parody of It's a Wonderful Life, where Moe comes up and says, hey, what's my money doing in your house, Fred? And he bashes him in the face. But anyway, the argument is that this creates economic growth. We couldn't have the banks just keep your money in the bank where you probably thought it was. No, for heaven's sake, you can't have that. They have to. How would banks be able to lend if we force them to keep the money there? Well, the answer to that is, when you have a checking account, those are called demand deposits. They call it that because you are entitled to it on demand. And any time you say, give me my $100, they're entitled to give it to you. On the other hand, if you have a CD, let's say, for 3 months or 6 months, you understand that for 3 months or 6 months, the bank has your money. And they're going to lend it, and they're going to do stuff with it, and if you try to take it out early, they're going to assess a penalty. And you know that going in. Well, that would be a legitimate form of lending. Because you both know, both parties know, you do not have the right to that money on demand. But money that you do have a right to on demand, it seems to me the banks need to keep for you on demand. But my opinion on the subject is not, and I know we could have objections all day long on this. But I think that the anti-fractional reserve banking position is much better. The argument for it is much better than people give credit. But secondly, now the way I'm understanding your question, I'm thinking about the other side of the coin, which is, okay, we've had a lot of capital inflows, is right?
Right.
But then at the same time, this has been well, okay, it seems to me we've had a lot of imbalances, let's say, because we've also had a lot of outflows of our debt instruments. And so what it seems to me is liable to happen is, I mean, there are some people who say that the American bond market is itself a bubble. So what I think is liable to happen is, I mean, is it inevitably going to happen, is that other countries will, especially since other countries are also experiencing a downturn right now, and they don't necessarily relish the prospect of lending the U.S. government another $1 trillion to fund its deficit. The deficit is actually $1.8 trillion, which was the size of the entire budget a few years ago. Now it's just the size of the deficit. And so it seems that what's liable to happen is that there will be, we're going to get more and more countries saying we don't want to lend to you anymore, or we're going to lend to you at on a slower rate. And so the U.S. government will have to fund itself from that point on, not from inflows coming from abroad, but either through higher taxes or just printing the money. And because you know, in order to borrow from the public, how is it going to do that? The American public has almost no savings. In order to entice them to save, you have to have very, very high interest rates. So it seems to me some kind of disaster is in the works. But I don't know when this is going to hit. I mean, I can say qualitatively there's a problem, but I can't say quantitatively what the time is. We'll take maybe 2 more.